Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we dive into the stories and mysteries behind everyday things. Today's question comes from one of our curious viewers, Soup Lover 99. Thanks for the suggestion, Soup Lover 99. You asked, why are most rulers 12 inches long? Who decided that was the perfect length? At first glance, this seems like a simple question. A ruler is a foot long because, well, it's a foot, right? But why is a foot 12 inches? And why do we still use it today when most of the world has moved on to the metric system? Turns out, this measurement has a history involving ancient civilizations, kings with possibly very influential feet, and a stubborn refusal to embrace change. So, grab your nearest ruler, if you can actually find one, and let's measure the history behind this everyday object, right here on Explaining Everything. The idea of using the human body for measurement isn't new. It's actually one of the oldest ways people measured things. The ancient Egyptians, Romans, and even Mesopotamians all had measurement systems based on body parts. Arms, hands, fingers, and yes, feet were commonly used as reference points. Now, as you can imagine, not all feet are the same size. If we based all measurements on my uncle's feet, everything would be at least 14 inches long. But back in the day, rulers weren't exactly standardized. Different regions used different lengths, leading to total measurement chaos. Imagine trying to buy wood for a house when one carpenter's foot was 10 inches and another's was 13. Nightmare fuel. The Romans had a measurement called the pes, which literally means foot in Latin. But it was about 11.6 inches long, not quite the modern foot. They also had a system where 12 unciae, the root of the word inch, made up 1 foot. This base 12 system stuck around and would later influence the way we measure things today. One of the most popular stories behind the 12-inch foot is that of King Henry I of England. Legend has it that his foot was exactly 12 inches long, and since being a king means never having to compromise, he supposedly declared that the official length of a foot. Now, is this true? Probably not, but it's a great example of how history loves a simple, dramatic explanation. In reality, England had been using the 12-inch foot measurement long before Henry I. It became more standardized over time, especially as trade and construction required more precise measurements. By the late 12th and early 13th centuries, England had settled on the foot being exactly 12 inches, and it spread from there. When the British Empire expanded, so did its measurement system, which is why America still uses feet and inches today. At this point, you might be wondering, why did they choose 12 inches instead of a nice, round, decimal-friendly 10? Wouldn't that have been easier? Well, surprisingly, 12 is actually a much more practical number for measurement. Unlike 10, which only divides neatly by 2 and 5, the number 12 can be divided evenly by 2, 3, 4, and 6. That made it way more useful for merchants, builders, and anyone else who needed to divide things up quickly. This is the same reason we have 12 months in a year, 12 hours on a clock, and why eggs are sold by the dozen instead of 10. The number 12 was just better for fractions, even if our modern metric-loving brains find it a little weird. So we've got the 12-inch foot. But when did rulers become a thing? The oldest known measuring devices date back over 4,000 years. The Indus Valley civilization had ivory rulers with incredibly precise markings. The ancient Egyptians had measuring rods. The Romans, ever the practical engineers, had wooden folding rulers that looked like something your dad would keep in the garage and insist is better than any tape measure. But the standard wooden ruler we know today didn't become popular until the 16th and 17th centuries, when standardized measurements became more common. Schools, carpentry, and various trades needed reliable, uniform tools. And since 12 inches was already an established measurement, the 12-inch ruler became the go-to tool. Of course, not all rulers are 12 inches long. There are 6-inch rulers for people who just need a tiny bit of order in their lives. Yardsticks exist for those who like commitment. And then there's the classic retractable measuring tape, the chaotic neutral of the ruler world, always too short or too long and constantly at risk of snapping back into your hand with alarming speed. Meanwhile, in metric-using countries, rulers are typically 30 centimeters long. And fun fact, 30 centimeters is actually slightly longer than 12 inches. So technically, metric rulers win the ruler length competition. So, why are most rulers 12 inches long? Because history said so. Because the number 12 is weirdly useful. Because King Henry I probably had a foot of legendary proportions. And because America still refuses to switch to metric. But no matter what kind of ruler you prefer, 12 inches, 30 centimeters, or a tape measure that somehow always gets tangled, one thing is clear. Without rulers, we'd all be drawing some very wobbly lines. If you enjoyed this video and are now surprised by the fact that King Henry I had a whopping 12 inches long foot, make sure to like and subscribe. And hey, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.